The morning began like any other in the quiet coastal town of Seabrook, where the ocean whispered its usual promises and people trusted, with a comfortable certainty, that tomorrow would arrive on time, just as the tides obeyed the moon. Daniel Morris woke up earlier than usual, not because he had somewhere to go, but because a strange, unnameable heaviness pressed against his chest, the kind that appears without warning and refuses explanation, a silent alarm for a danger not yet seen. He stood by his window watching the tide move in and out with its ancient, patient rhythm, thinking about how many times he had postponed difficult conversations and postponed expressing simple gratitude, perpetually convinced there would always be another day, another crossing, another chance. Daniel was a ferry operator, a job that carried people across the bay every morning and brought them back every evening, a silent guardian of their daily transitions. He recognized faces, memorized their routines, the businessman who always read the paper, the student with her headphones, but rarely learned their stories, the currents that ran beneath their quiet surfaces. One passenger, however, always caught his attention, a quiet elderly woman named Eleanor Whitman, who boarded the ferry every Friday without fail, carrying a small, worn leather notebook close to her chest. She never spoke much beyond a polite greeting, but she always offered a gentle, knowing smile, as if she carried a secret solace about the future, a warmth that contrasted with the often chilly bay air. That Friday, however, Eleanor was conspicuously absent. The ferry crossed the water as usual, the engine humming its familiar drone, but the journey felt incomplete, hollowed out by the lack of her gentle presence at the railing. The space she occupied seemed to hold a quiet question. Later that afternoon, as Daniel was securing the lines at the dock, he received a call from the town hospital. Eleanor had passed away peacefully during the night. She had no close family, the nurse explained, but she had left a specific, handwritten instruction. Her notebook was to be given to the ferry operator who saw her every week. When Daniel received the parcel, he sat alone in the pilot house as dusk fell, the leather soft and cool in his hands. Inside the notebook were letters, dozens of them, each carefully dated but never sent, the pages filled with a graceful, looping script. They were written to people Eleanor had loved, forgiven, lost, or never found the courage to speak to, a sister long estranged, a first love, a friend she had wronged, even a note of thanks to a kind stranger from decades past. The final entry, dated just the previous week, stopped Daniel's breath. In it, Eleanor did not offer philosophy, only a clear, direct plea from beyond the silence, urging the reader not to hoard their words, to tell people what they mean to you before the permanent quiet settles in and does it for you. The weight of those unsent words, a life's ledger of unspoken love and regret, settled deeply into him, transforming his understanding of the quiet woman and her weekly, contemplative journeys. Inspired by Eleanor's legacy, Daniel began to change the very fabric of his daily life. He spoke more, initiating conversations that ventured beyond the weather. He listened carefully, hearing not just the words but the hesitations and hopes within them. He apologized when needed and said thank you when it mattered, understanding now that the ferry was not just a vessel for crossing water but a fleeting, shared space where human connections, however brief, could be made meaningful and resonant. Weeks later, on a misty morning crossing, Daniel noticed a young man hesitating at the dock, holding a phone tightly but not dialing, his expression a portrait of familiar uncertainty and fear. Seeing his own former self reflected in that hesitation, Daniel approached. He smiled, a gesture now infused with a new warmth, and said softly, "It's never too early to say it. You still have time." In that moment, he felt Eleanor's lesson passing forward, a quiet inheritance from one soul to another, a ripple extending from her stillness into the world's noise. Some goodbyes are not loud, but are felt in an empty space on a deck. Some lessons arrive too late for one person, but just in time for another, caught in the very act of repeating the old, quiet mistake. And the ocean, as always, relentless and boundless, carried them all forward, its endless horizon a reminder of both the fragility of our moments and the enduring continuity of the stories we dare to voice, and those we, too often, leave behind.